r/AskReddit. Middle school teachers of Reddit. What is the most awkward/cringy thing you've seen a student do? I used to teach middle school before graduating to teach high school. While I was in middle school, I had one awkward student in my last period that took a liking to me. He would stay after school every day just to hang out with me. He was always asking how he could help out after class, like cleaning the whiteboard, putting chairs up, that sort of thing. We would usually talk while he did this. One day he surprised me by saying, "I bet you'd be a really good dad. I think it would be awesome if you were my dad. Think of all the things we could do." I kind of laughed it off because middle schoolers say a lot of weird thing. A couple of weeks go by. Same thing. He's staying after school to hang out with me when he says, "You know you have a conference with my mom tomorrow." "Yeah, of course. She's really cute. You'll like her." What? Maybe you guys can go out on a date. Needless to say, that was an awkward conference. I had a 7th grade girl raise her hand and ask me to come to her desk. When I leaned over, she asked quietly if she could go to the bathroom and gestured at her lap and muttered something I didn't hear. Assuming that she started her period, fortunately in dark black pants, I'll let her leave, of course. When she comes back, she stands next to her chair for the rest of the lecture and leaves quietly at the bell. Next class comes in, and, while I'm straightening up and standing in the hallway, the student who was assigned the same seat as that girl grabs some paper towels and starts cleaning up. There is a huge puddle in the chair and on the floor. It suddenly occurs to me, the dance teacher, that this poor girl had peed her pants in 7th grade. I told the boy that someone spilled their tea/water and tried to get him to stop cleaning it up, but he was like, "Nope. Already done." He had just mopped up some girl's pee. I told him to wash his hands in case that he was sticky and let it go. I asked the girl the next day if everything was okay. She was so amazed that nobody even noticed. Thank goodness for unobservant teachers and students that day, but watching that boy clean up pee has haunted me. He was almost done when I realized what was going on, but still. My wife works as a 7th grade Ella teacher. There is a kid in her school that everyone is afraid of, including teachers. He has very morbid thoughts and has no issue sharing them with everyone. When classmates share how their weekend went, he discusses how he loves killing people in his video games and how good he is at doing it, etc. A few weeks ago on a Monday, said student returns my wife a loaner pen that was given out. "Thank you," she says, to which he replies, "No thank you. I've slept with it under my pillow all weekend because it smells like you." He has since been assigned a new Ella teacher that is actually across the hall, and since then he had to get his desk moved in that classroom because he would be caught staring into my wife's classroom for the entire class. Bonus fact, they had parent-teacher conferences and his single-parent father is equally as sketched out by his own son. I had a kid as a student once that could be a little bit scary. He was walking around once with a pencil threatening to stab other kids. He would get into rages where he seemed to just lose control. I tried to be understanding with him. His family was in a stressful situation as far as I could tell, because of his younger brother having a severe learning disability. Perhaps he was angry at a lack of attention. I made it a point to be nice and understanding with him to show him that he is a valuable person, even if he may not feel that way at home. I used to teach 7th grade science in a school with fairly low-level students, so reading skills weren't particularly sharp. As we're about to get into the differences between living and non-living things, it was time to cover some new terminology, so I had a student read a paragraph from the textbook aloud to the class. It went something like this: "There are all kinds of orgasms in the world. Big orgasms, small orgasms, even microscopic orgasms. Some orgasms have fur, some orgasms have scales, and even you are an orgasm." Not a single student knew any different, or at least didn't make a big deal out of it, but I was about to die with laughter. I went into the hallway to compose myself, then read the second paragraph myself. An organism is a living thing, which can be defined as taught as an assistant. During an English verbal exam, students must ask the proctor a question. One boy asked if I liked him. In Japanese, it could be both. Do you consider me a worthwhile human being, and would you bang? Sort of like. Erring on the side of caution, so as not to call a potentially depressed student worthless, I went with yes. He fixed the problem right away by asking me why, and I promptly told him, because I didn't hate him. He got the point. Edit. The test was in English. Students had to ask me a question in English, but the word like translates with all of the same various connotations we have in English, and was explained to students in the same way. It was also a special, non-standard public school for students who couldn't fit in with the rigidity of standard Japanese schools. I wasn't read into specific backgrounds for individual students, but I was just told that many students were mentally weak and should always be given positivity. Yes, but rather than no, but. We had a new teacher in middle school, and I won't lie, he was fine. He was young and very handsome, and the girls were all hitting puberty at that time. One girl took it to an extreme though. She would scream at him, "Will you marry me, Mr. Clark? You're so fucking sexy. You're so hot, Mr. Clark. Kiss me." It was so incredibly awkward. I felt so badly for him. Come to think of it, actually, that girl ended up transferring schools, so there must have been some serious talk going on with her parents about it. That poor teacher must have been terrified. Lol. Edit. Okay you guys, I guess Mr. Clark is a pretty common teacher name. You can stop asking me if I went to your school. Lol. During Black History Month, we were assigned to create a PowerPoint document on an historical black person. Then, we all had to present them on a projector to the class. Around halfway through the presentations is a kid named Travis who was assigned Malcolm X. He loads up his presentation on the projector, and the title page features a chimpanzee. Odd, but maybe there is something to it. Nope. Straight-faced, he delivered every page of his entire presentation replete with photos of baboons, monkeys, bananas, and culminating in a photo of a gorilla and a large animated gun pointed at its head going bang like in cartoons. This, of course, being the assassination of X. I watched this teacher the entire time. She turned redder and redder as he went on. Finally, at the slide with the gun and gorilla, she exploded on him. I don't remember exactly what she said, but this usually demure teacher went into a rage, yanking him into the hall, and presumably to the office. If you're wondering, yes, there was a black student, and no, it was not Travis. It's been so long that I don't recall her reaction, but it must have been awful. I can't for the life of me understand why the teacher let him go on for so long. My wife taught in a middle school. She's pretty petite, 5 feet 2 inches, so she could blend in with the student populace if she wasn't careful. Walking in the hall one day, a 7th grade boy walks by her and goes, "Damn girl, that ass is looking fine." It probably was. When she wheeled around to face him and he saw her teacher's badge, he just about shit himself. She didn't get him in trouble, BC. It was such an insane circumstance that she felt a little bad for him and how mortified he was. She was just kind of like, "I don't need to tell you how bad you just messed up, right?" He was just pleadingly saying, "I'm so sorry." She let him off with a, "You really need to respect women more than that." When I myself was in 8th grade, we were in history class and being monstrous to the teacher, talking over her, not paying attention, etc. She finally loses her patience and flips out on us. She said something along the lines of, "What can I do to make you guys pay attention?" Everyone in my stories speaks in caps lock, to which my friend Logan replied, "You can take off your pants." Not so awkward, but definitely cringe-worthy. Walking out of the library during lunch on Thursday, I see group of 7th grade boys standing in a circle dropping something over and over again laughing. As I passed them, I see it looks/sounds like a phone being dropped. I assume it's just a phone case. I stop. Then as I'm standing there, the boy next to me drops his phone from shoulder height. I'm talking newer iPhone/Samsung phones. Me, "What are you guys doing?" He tells me it's a new app to me. 8th grader showed us. When you drop the phone, the app makes a funny noise. I gave them the look and said, "I think someone might be trolling you," and went on my way. I had one of the boys in class later that day. He explained they discovered you could just whack the phone with your hand and it would make the funny sound. I haven't had the chance to find the app or discuss it with Tommy yet, but I'm looking forward to it. Not a teacher, but I've been saving this story for years. 5th grade. We're almost at the end of the year, so to practice for middle school, all of the teachers had organized like a little block scheduling drill. We are going from class to class and just playing some game or etc. So we are in this one class doing like sacral charades. We each say a thing and the person next to it has to mime it out. So I said dumpster diving, and so the kid next to me does like a rolling somersault. It was pretty sick. As he is standing up like a boss, he just says eatin' booty. Pause. Then his eyes go real wide as he realized what he said. Rest of the class has no idea. Next kid in line is like, how do you even do that? And proceeds to mime out eating something with a fork and a disgusted expression. The teacher's face was pure horror. Fast forward like 12 years and what he said suddenly clicked and I just started laughing. I'm a substitute teacher and I work in a middle school that my mom teaches at. Every single day I go to work there I observe the weirdest stuff. I once had to call my mom to come to the class I was teaching because I honestly couldn't figure out what to do with a boy who stood up and just pissed himself. Randomly just stood up, said hey, friends, countrymen, then peed in his jeans. Apparently he was dead to do it for $30 bucks. Where do they get this money, Jesus? I couldn't stop laughing. I had to hide my face behind a binder or something while I got a hold of myself. I wasn't laughing because it was funny exactly, more because I felt like it was such a demented thing to do. I was borderline horrified. Moral of the story is I'm a 22-year-old senior in college who is super glad I work with my mom because kids are weird as fuck. Offspring of a middle school special ed teacher here. My mom loves this story. So she had turned around to help a student, and in that brief time a commotion started brewing because Tommy, for unknown reasons, started licking the floor, and he was refusing to stop. Some kids explained they were saying, mind your own business. Some kids were telling Tommy to get up off the floor. Tommy was absolutely refusing to stop. One kid got particularly upset and shouted, full volume, I hope you catch something from the floor and die. At which point my mom turned away and investigated. Edit. That's pretty much of the end of the story. My mom just asked all the kids what was going on and told Tommy to get off the floor and take a seat, and apparently everyone just went on with their lives. At the end of 6th form, UK ages 16 to 18, every class made a leavers video to play at our final assembly. Whilst most of the classes did heartwarming compilations of us all as friends, or a funny mockumentary, the best one class could come up with was a gossip video. The whole video was just them harassing popular teachers with questions about their personal and sex lives, if they had crushes on the other teachers, what were their opinions of them etc. The teachers just looked very uncomfortable and answered their questions as diffusingly as possible. They didn't bother to edit the footage very well, so most of the video is these 4 students running around the hallways laughing. It was the last video of the assembly, and throughout it the hall was silent. The teachers featured were trying very hard not to make eye contact and the happy mood quickly went out the window. The guy running the equipment could be heard asking if he should turn the video off, but the headmaster didn't want to embarrass the students who made it. I teach 8th grade, the last year before high school in the district. Towards the end of the year, high school students come down to tell the 8th graders about student council, and a few weeks later, we have an election for president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. This one student who was a total burnout ran for every position. My colleagues and I were all surprised and somewhat hopeful that the opportunity had sparked an interest in him. The day of the election, all of the 8th grade students are in the auditorium to hear the candidates give their speeches. They are supposed to be 30 seconds 1 minute long, and the candidates are encouraged to be serious and explain what they hope to accomplish if elected. This kid gets up on stage and gives his speech, which consists solely of screaming into the microphone for an entire minute. No one laughed. No one clapped. It was simultaneously hilarious, terrifying, awkward, and painful. The principal pulled him aside and told him that if he did it again during his second speech, he would get a detention. The kid nodded his head, and when his second speech rolled around, he screamed for about 4 seconds before the principal snatched the mic from him and sent him to the office. 7th grade math teacher here. I could probably write a book with cringy moments I've experienced. Here a few. Had a student who went to the bathroom and came back and had a watermark or something on her butt. Her friend proceeded to scream, "Ooh, you have cum on your butt," in front of the whole class. I was disgusted. Ended up speaking with her outside and asking if she would say that to her grandmother, and she realized she had fucked up. This year had a student ask me multiple times if I would call him Big Daddy. During my first year teaching, one of my students said, "Ms. your pencil sharpener sucks." So I jokingly said, "Well, you suck." Not one of my brightest teaching moments. He then replied, "Well, you swallow." I was mortified. He was mortified, and I told him to never speak to me like that again, and prayed he never told his parents about the exchange. Just to name a few. Not a teacher, but every year, the 8th grade class at my school would go on a whale watch. We all were informed that if we had not been on a boat before, we should take motion sickness medicine to help with seasickness, as the boat was not massive and it was an issue every year. Well, there were these 3 kids that I grew up with that were like the Three Stooges. Let's call them A, B, and C. I decided to not take the medicine, thinking it would be funny. We left on the boat, went out and saw a few whales. It was a good time. We started to make our way back after being out for a few hours, and as expected, Kid A started to not feel so hot. He complains to one of the chaperones, and they tell him to go up to the open deck to get some fresh air. Kid B and C followed him up there. I started to egg him on at this point, telling him all sorts of fucked up stuff. Dude, picture this purple oozing vagina with ants crawling out of it. Imagine a poop-filled condom exploding on your face. You know, typical middle school boy stuff. Now this kid A is absolutely pale white, but 100% reluctant to throw up, as there were quite a few kids up on deck at this point. Kid B, easily the most sick and twisted person I knew in my entire youth, is getting desperate to make his buddy a yak in front of everyone. So he did what any good friend would do and stuck his finger down his own throat and threw up all over Kid A's shoes, an ungodly amount of this red orangey vomit. Instantly, Kid A fucking lost it and let out another bucket load of some white clam chowder-esque vomit. Kid C at this point was in tears, but Kid B didn't want him to feel left out, so he stuck his finger in Kid A's pile of chowder vomit and ate a glop. To which Kid C caved and added to the collage with his own brand of this brownish looking bile. At this point, all the teachers and chaperones panicked and were scrambling to get all of my classmates and I off the deck and into the cabin before we all lost it. And to make matters worse, the vomit proceeded to drift all over the deck with each swell and drip down over the edge onto the deck below. It was amazing. We would all watch out the window as we took a roll and a cup of puke would fall off each side of the boat, chumming the waters. They were so proud of each other on the bus ride home. I think they stopped whale watches for a few years after our class. I had my 8th graders doing a project on colonies. They were researching using Chromebooks, and I had one of my boys raise his hand and tell me he didn't understand the images he was seeing. Me being 8 months pregnant, I tell him to bring his Chromebook to my desk. He tells me he's trying to find an image for the religion of the Virginia colony for his slideshow. I look at his Chromebook, myself confused for a second trying to work out the images. Then I look at his search bar and I see it. Poor kid is looking so confused right next to me staring at these pictures, and I say as delicately as I can, "I think you made a typo." And he looks at his search bar and turns absolutely white. Vagina religion is now just blazing from the screen. He immediately slams the Chromebook shut and raced back to his desk. I tried so hard not to laugh, but I couldn't hold it in. I was at my desk practically crying as other kids are wondering what the heck is going on. This poor student who always tries to play up his bad boy persona was so embarrassed He even sheepishly came up to me later to ask if he was in trouble. I told him it was very obviously an accident, so not to worry about it. Thankfully school protection stopped a lot of the more graphic images from popping up, and I had to let the VP know that it was an innocent mistake since his search got flagged. I never had a behavior issue from him again. I think he appreciated the fact that I laughed about it rather than making it more awkward. Got a call from my son's principal one day. It was actually my first day on a new job, which is irrelevant to the story, but it added to the stress level that I had to take the call while sitting in the car with my new boss. She tells me that over the weekend, while at his mother's, no rules over there, total autonomy, he sent a picture of his genitals over Snapchat to his girlfriend. In return, the girlfriend sent a pic of her bare chest. The GF was at a sleepover with 6 other girls who also saw the pic, and I'm sure they told everyone they knew. Immediately I'm thinking he could be arrested for possessing or distributing child pornography. I ask what kind of trouble he is in, and she says the school can't suspend him because it did not happen on school property. I then ask if law enforcement has been notified, to which she replies that the school resource officer was there with them. I asked again if he was in trouble, and she tells me that they cannot suspend him from school. At this point, I'm hotter than a blast furnace on the surface sun in the middle July. With my new boss sitting right next to me, I shout, "Lady, do I need to call a fucking lawyer for my kid?" To which she replies, "No sir, we just wanted to let you know that the incident occurred." Not a teacher, but I'm sure whoever my 6th grade teacher was probably cringed through most, if not all of it. We had a writing assignment about something. I honestly forget the topic, but not so long story, even shorter. I came to class with about a 20-page Star Wars fanfic about Han Solo and Boba Fett fighting each other in very specific detail. I also read the entirety out it aloud. Some kids seemed kind of jazzed about it, but I then realized later it wasn't because I was the new Timothy Zahn. It was because I had eaten up probably 30 minutes of the class with what I imagine was my incoherent geek mumblings, and they didn't have to read this that day. Another story from my awkward as fuck middle school years. I was once trying to impress a bunch of 8th graders as we waited for our parents to pick us up. So I told this joke I just had that day in the halls. What's the difference between a blonde and a helicopter? Not everyone's been in a helicopter. Needless to say, a teacher was hanging around close enough to catch the joke and added it to her personal collection. The first person she shared it with was my mom, as she of course came to pick me up before the other kids. The last super embarrassing middle school story I can remember was when my friends and I had gone full wrestling idiots with the height of WCW popularity. We were having all-day submission hold contests where you tried to make your friends tap out with your sweet finisher. Mine was called the Executioner. Badass, I know. So around 4th period literature, my teacher had to walk out for a moment and I took the perfect time to slap on the Executioner on a friend. When I say perfect time, I mean my teacher pretty much came back instantly to see a middle schooler grabbing another middle schooler in what I could only describe as a version of a reverse armbar mixed with a setup of a power bomb. It was even more embarrassing when I had to describe it to my baseball coach when she tried to ban me from playing in a game that day. Sorry if this was super long. I was just a walking cringe machine in middle school. Different sort of school, but I taught in CRCs. I taught K-12 for kids with issues ranging from schizophrenia to gang violence to sexual violence to addiction. This one dude came into a very rough CRC which held a lot of gang affiliated youth. He kept talking about his set and his crew running streets on the northwest side. Well, I lived on the northwest side, and that shit was the richest, most bourgeoisie place in the city. So I asked which neighborhood he was from, and he says, let's say, Pinecrest, which is the name of the condos across the street from me. So I say the road, and ask if that's the road in his hood, and he's like, yeah, Woodbridge represent, yo. The next time he acted like an asshole in class, I asked to talk to him. I told him that I was from his hood, that I knew exactly how nice it was, how low the crime rate was, and what a charlatan he was being. I told him I was bluffing, that the next time he acted like a gangster in my class I was going to out him to the kids, who had legit grown up blood or crip, and that if I heard him say Juan's World one more time, I was gonna laugh my ass off and make fun of him. It worked. Edit. When his mommy finally got him, I used to see him walking home from school past my house all the time. Silly ass. Obligatory, not the actual teacher. In my grade 7 math class, 2 friends and I would play card games. If we finished our work before the period ended, one would often get loud and angry if he lost. One day, we were playing Crazy Eights, and I was winning. Angry kid didn't like that, and was gradually getting louder and more visibly agitated. I had a bit of a headache, so I sarcastically said I'd give him $50 if he made it through our game without yelling. But this kid didn't have anger issues, but had Asperger's, unbeknownst to us. And people with Asperger's often can't understand sarcasm and tone. The bell rang, we put the cards away, and he came up to me at the door. With a triumphant grin, he demanded his $50. Of course, I didn't actually have $50. I was 12, but I did have a few pennies in my wallet. So, I opened my wallet, jokingly pulled out a penny, and dropped it into his outstretched hand. This kid lost it. He roared, "You're supposed to give me $50 you piece of shit," in a voice that would rouse the dead, and whipped the penny at the back of my head as I bolted down the stairs. He then picked up the teacher's coffee cup off of her desk and threw it at us as we ran. And guess who got in trouble? The supervisor stuck her head out the door and angrily demanded my friend and I come back and walk out properly, and we did, all while Spurg's kid was angrily gibbering at us and hopping up and down, while the teacher tried to calm him down. This is when my other friend and I started to think he may have issues, seeing as he just swore and smashed the teacher's coffee cup and didn't get in trouble. He eventually learned how to deal with his anger, and we reconnected in high school and became great friends. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.